And Jared Kushner came in the equation, his son-in-law. I mean, just imagine if Trump's son-in-law was Palestinian.
What do you think about the Abraham Accords?
Well, the Abraham Accords are a real reason why this happened, why these attacks took place. Because the whole point of the Abraham Accords was to go over the heads of the Palestinians, put that whole issue in the icebox forever, let them stay in their cages or wherever, maybe give them a few crumbs, and then Israel will make peace with the monarchies who have all the money and all of the sovereign wealth funds. And Jared Kushner's directly overseeing that. There's going to be more Trump towers in Dubai. And meanwhile, Trump goes and assassinates Qasem Soleimani, second most powerful figure, prestigious figure in Iran, who heads the IRGC, which has a relationship with the factions in Gaza as well as Lebanon. I mean, he was setting the stage for all this. So the Abraham Accords and the normalization with Saudi Arabia, between Israel and Saudi Arabia, the Al-Aqsa flood operation declared by Hamas was explicitly designed to undermine that. Like, they openly said it.
Then what, I guess the issue is everything leads to chaos. Everything leads to conflict.
Well, everything leads back to Jerusalem in the Middle East, and the Palestinians will not allow themselves, the rest of the region, especially these monarchs who don't answer to anybody except their own internal clan, they will not allow themselves to be ignored.
What would happen if the security fencing, the barriers around the Gaza Strip were all removed and all the people of Palestine were granted free movement? What would happen?
Well, it would certainly reduce the drive to violence and revenge over time, but there would no longer, what would they be within what we call Israel? And this goes to the whole logic of Zionism. In order to have a Jewish state, you have to have a demographic majority of Jews within a certain territory, although Israel has no internationally recognized borders. The U.S. has a border, like you all support defending the border. Israel doesn't actually have a border. It just has areas that it declares Israel, and then it says, we have a majority of Jews, we are the Jewish state. So the areas outside
Aren't the borders created by all the countries around it, though?
Well, Palestinians don't have a country. Gaza's not a country.
Yeah,
it's a human warehouse because they're not Jews.
But Jordan and Egypt and Lebanon, they all have borders.
Yeah, yes.
So that's what
But
constitutes
Israel declares
the borders
itself
for...
a democracy while violently demographically engineering a majority of a specific ethno-religious group. So that would be like the U.S. saying, we are a white Christian nation. We're not deporting the migrants because they're not legal citizens. We're deporting them because they're not white Christians. That is the problem. That's why Gaza's there and has to perpetually be there.
But I mean, they're having kids, right? The population's growing.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, I mean, Israel could cut food off and stop population growth. They
just cut off electricity, gas, and water.
I mean, after Hamas came in and killed a bunch of civilians and, shot up a bunch of, houses and stuff. I mean, so, I look at it and I'm like, if Hamas, perhaps you can argue that it is a roughed edge scalpel in their attacks, which results in, it backfires on them tremendously. I want to see peace. I don't like the stories that, I hear from you about what's going on in Gaza, but all I see with everything they've just done is they've exacerbated the problem tenfold.
Yeah. Why would they do this? They have from their point of view, there's no other diplomatic path to getting out of the siege. And the siege was becoming too comfortable for Israel. Israel's always going to be in a comfortable situation as long as the Palestinians don't do anything.
Firing rockets doesn't accomplish anything for them. What do they gain by firing rockets?
Well, I mean, in each conflict, the more rockets, I mean, and this is not my justification. I've been under those rockets too. It's not pleasant. It's not as bad as being under the Israeli missiles that I've been under, which is absolutely horrifying with a drone over your head all night and you wake up and houses are blown up around you. But it's still scary. The point is they get concessions, and it's the only way and the only time that Israel has ever given them any concessions, whether it's more work permits.
All I hear is terror works. All I hear you saying is terrorism works.
Or let's look at it from this perspective.
Power works.
Let's make the other hypothetical.
State terror works as well.
Or
we're the masters of it.
From the perspective, from your perspective, you could make the argument that Israel lets them fire the rockets to justify the expansion of control over the Gaza Strip, and that you're saying it works. Maybe they want it to work. They want Hamas to constantly attack civilians So they can go to the international stage, they can go to the United States, they can go to foreign countries and say, see, this is why we need money, and this is why we're justified in controlling the things that we control, having the Iron Dome. I kind of view it like right now, for the average American who has no idea about what this conflict is rooted in, all they know is that civilians were massacred.
Can you tell me?
And it is. Go ahead.
Tell me about the Balfour Declaration, unless you want to keep going. This is about the inception of the idea of the British mandate for Palestine we talked about last night. Basically, the end of World War I, the Arabs were fighting with the Ottomans, the Germans, and the Austrians, and they were winning the war. So the British and the French manipulated the Arabs, and they were like, if you betray the Ottoman Empire, we'll give you this land we call Palestine after the war. So the Arabs were like, sweet. They betrayed the Ottomans. The French and the British won the war, and then they went back on their deal with this secret declaration, the Balfour Declaration. Can you take me from there and talk me through?
After we cover where you were at, Tim, which
the gist of it being, to the average person around the world who doesn't follow this stuff, Hamas just committed a major act of terror, killing civilians.
Right. Well, but that's because they're being propagandized by corporate media, which is telling them this is unprovoked. I mean, just look up how many times.
But provocation is immaterial. I mean, like for me, when I cover this,
context isn't material, but the reason reason that they did it was because otherwise they're consolidating permanent siege in the Gaza Strip. And yes, it's a fact, as you pointed out, that Israel initially supported Hamas. Actually, the Mossad funneled money, as Robert Fisk reported, into Hamas's coffers in the 1980s because they wanted to destroy the PLO, which was secular, more socialist oriented, and they saw them as the greater threat. Israel allowed Hamas free movement around the Gaza Strip when Israel internally controlled the Gaza Strip. But we're entering a new era in international relations, a multipolar era where the United States doesn't matter as much. And so while this is kind of a bonanza for Israel to be able to show these images of a music festival being attacked and so on, but the United States doesn't matter as much in the region, and Iran is emerging as a regional power. So I think the calculus on the ground is changing a little bit, and it's moving more in favor of the Palestinians, as long as, and I think that is another factor in why this took place. On the Balfour Declaration, I mean, you're talking about the earliest stages of the colonial powers handing over the land of Palestine to those they saw as a more powerful force. And a lot of it was motivated actually by anti-Semitism. I mean, Balfour didn't have kind things to say about Jews in the UK. And so he thought that if we actually displace what he saw as a Jewish problem onto the backs of an indigenous population, just get our Jews out of England and put them there, it's going to be a good deal for us, and they'll be our allies eventually, and maybe we can use them to control the Suez Canal perpetually if we lose control of it. The English anti-Semites were not the only anti-Semites in history to see Zionist colonization as a positive thing. The largest export market for the Zionist colonies in 1930s and pre-state 1940s Palestine was Germany. And the Zionist movement, the labor wing, the quasi-socialist wing, actually inked a formal deal with Nazi Germany called the Havara Agreement, the transfer agreement. Anyone can look this up. It's on the books. And basically what they were doing was they were exchanging the property of Jews in Germany for their bodies. And more Jews means we'll start to move towards a Jewish majority here, and they'll fight the indigenous people. And then the Nazi Germany was saying, well, we'll get their property and we need their wealth. So it was a very convenient arrangement. David Ben-Gurion's number 2, his name was Haimar Losarov. You don't have to worry about the names, but he was actually assassinated when he bragged about this deal in Tel Aviv. So there's been tons of collaboration with anti-Semites in order to consolidate the colonization of Palestine. Now look at this. There's this carrier battle group that's sailing into the region. There's so much we can say about it, but one thing it says is that, first of all, Palestinians have no sovereignty. They cannot call on anyone to support them militarily. And
I mean, Iran's kind of supporting them militarily,
they
aren't
can't come in with their Iranian fast boats or whatever. They they can't really come in there. They can't get in there.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.